An Unexpected Journey, a Peyote Trip Report by Coyote, uploaded to airwood.org May 5th, 2018. What I found peyote to be is not what I expected of it. For months I had been planning my journey down to Arizona to visit a church I belong to there. I arrived there on a Friday afternoon and began fasting, drinking nothing but water until the following day. When 24 hours had passed, I was then ready to receive the sacrament. I was given a mason jar full of tea, both powdered and ground up plant matter, and after signing some paperwork, off into the wilderness I did walk. The instructions on the jar that were placed there said to take a sip every 20 minutes, and I obliged. After cracking open the jar, I immediately realized that everything I had read about the medicine was true. It was foul-smelling, and on top of that, the most sour, bitter, sharp, rooty-tasting thing I had ever placed on my palate. Every time I would take a sip of this green tea, my body would immediately try to reject it. After the first sip, I started to feel like I had the equivalence of a few beers. My equilibrium seemed a bit off, and my head was spinning slightly. After following the instructions kinda loosely, I had half the jar down in about 3 hours. In those 3 hours, I experienced the most agonizing stomach pain of my life, sharp pains and nausea. I'd been laying down on my sleeping bag for most of this time because it was the only thing that gave me any comfort from the stomach pains. I had decided to get up and start a fire since the sun was going down. After preparing it, I noticed how much my movement had increased the nausea. I started the fire, and it was as if I had never seen a fire before. The flames looked so different. That was when I noticed the medicine really started to take an effect and feel more than just the side effects. And then it came. The purge. I took a sip of my tea and threw up right away. But it was more than just vomiting. It was a catharsis, a purging of bad spirits, and all the tea in my stomach came out. Afterwards, I feel so much better, as if I had been in hell and had now found my heaven. I noticed at this point it had more of an effect on me than I had thought. I thought maybe the nausea had taken away some of my ability to notice how it was affecting me. At this point, the full moon was rising. And I tell you, I have never seen such a beautiful sight in my life. It looked as if I could walk up the hills in the background and onto the moon. After gawking at the moon for an unknown amount of time, I noticed my throat was dry from my mouth being open, so I went back to the fire and took the last half of the tea in 2 big gulps, which was not an easy feat. 20 minutes passed, and I again felt the agonizing pain the medicine had the power of giving, until I threw more wood on the fire about 4 hours later and again purged out what seemed to be the rest of my stomach. And again felt the second wind. I was free again to notice I was somewhere else, but still right there. I was totally alone, but felt the presence of someone else. The stars were spinning around me. While I laid on the ground, I noticed 2 stars that looked like eyes, but they were my eyes. And I felt myself looking back at myself. I felt like I saw God for the first time. I never felt that way on LSD, but did on peyote. And God was myself looking back at myself. As you can tell, by this point I was at my peak. I began to think a million thoughts a second, and although there wasn't many visual hallucinations, when I closed my eyes, dreams or visions would bombard my senses, the most real and solid images I have ever seen in my head. I pulled some headphones and my iPod out of my back pocket and turned on some music, and I noticed the weirdest auditory hallucinations. Everything seemed an octave down. Not like boomers or LSD where it fluctuates, but it was always a solid octave down. I had started to come down a bit, and the time passed since I had taken it at this point was 10 hours. I started to lay down. I knew I wouldn't sleep, but I was trying to get comfortable. I laid awake for about 2 hours, having the most beautiful visions and hearing the weirdest sounds that weren't there because I had put my iPod away at that point. Eventually, I fell asleep, but it felt like I had only slept for a blink, like I had closed my eyes and suddenly I awoke and the sun was up. I noticed I felt pretty normal and no hangover to speak of, where I immediately walked to my car and broke my fast with some Pringles I had in the car, and I tell no lie, they were the best potato chips I have ever tasted. All in all, I had a wonderful and life-changing experience. I was able to see myself without ego and emotion getting in the way and really learned a lot about myself. Ever since, I've found that in ways personal to me, this has helped me greatly in my everyday life. Though some of the side effects were, for lack of a better word, nasty, such as the nausea, the shakes, and the inability to control my body temperature, I found the experience well overpowered the small negative aspects. I must say, this peyote is a sacrament and a medicine. It is not a recreational drug. It is far too powerful to abuse and is not what you expect it is. Peyote Way Church member.